It's Down to Business with Jack Miller. Forget what they teach you in school. This is real life. Not Wall Street, but Main Street. A real show on what's really involved with starting and running a business, with all the ups and downs. Our guests will answer your questions and provide you with valuable information. Stay tuned and join in the conversation. Call us at 305-541-2350. Follow us on Facebook at Jack Miller Down to Business or on Twitter at HJackMiller1.
With that, you know what? Let's get Brad Thomas on the phone. I promise we're going to talk Donald Trump, and I want to talk REITs. Hey, Brad, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, Brad, I really appreciate you joining us. On the phone, I want to set up a little background. We were a little bantering about Donald Trump, but really, I asked you to come on originally, and I still mean this, to talk about REITs, because I'm one of these weirdos who find real estate investment trusts and REITs very exciting. But I want to talk about that. But for everyone, Brad is, and Brad, if I get any of this wrong, you can jump in. I think Brad is the foremost expert on REITs in this country. He writes for Forbes. He's, I think, editor and publisher, if that's not the right word, for Intelligent Investor, for iREITinvestors.com, which just rebranded themselves. He has a laundry list. He's like the expert on REITs. And Brad, you don't know this, but many years ago, I actually bought a REIT, which I still own today, which has done pretty well based on your recommendation. Because one of the things I love about you is you're also a value investor. And I find a lot of people, you're a student of Ben Graham, I believe, and I'll let you speak for yourself, but I love that value investing background. And I recently found out that you're writing a book on Donald Trump, so I'm really excited about that. So thank you for taking the time. I know you're incredibly busy for the show. So Brad, how did I do with the introduction so far? Did I get most of it right?
I think you nailed it. I think you're hired.
I'm hired. Oh, okay. That's good. I was expecting you to say I'm fired.
That's funny.
Brad, so let's talk. Let's get out of the way because we were just talking about it. And Donald Trump. Tell me what you think of him in context of him as a businessman, him running for president. And keep in mind, we're going to have to break for commercial in a couple minutes. So we're going to have to break and then we'll take it up. So give us a couple minutes on what you think of Donald Trump.
Sure. Well, I'll start. You know, I met Mr. Trump about 3 years ago. I get to New York a lot with part of my job, meeting with a lot of the REIT management teams, and of course, Forbes is based up in New Jersey now. So, you know, I get back and forth quite a bit. So I got to meet him about 3 years ago. But really going back, when I got out of college, which has been about 25 years ago, I read The Art of the Deal. It was actually released the same year that I was getting out of college, and I wanted to get into real estate, and I wanted to be a real estate developer, and so for me, I mean, that was my first introduction to Donald Trump. When I got out of college, you know, and I read The Art of the Deal, which was a New York Times bestseller, and of course Trump, you know, he'll tell you that was one of the best books ever, but what I tell him is that my book will be better than his book, and so you know, I've spent 25 years in real estate so far, and mostly in development. And about 5 years ago, really as a result of the Great Recession and some of the failures that I went through, and by the way, I love your Zig Ziglar section of the show, but when I went through some tough times financially in the recession, as most people did that own commercial real estate, you know, I really decided to turn into a writer, and it's just something I've always wanted to do. I had a passion for that. So now I'm kind of connecting all those dots. I never imagined I would even meet Donald Trump, let alone write a book on Donald Trump. And now that he's running for president, it's just it's really almost surreal to me to see kind of how this has evolved. So I'm really excited to get the book out. You know, Trump is not paying me for this book. This is my book. What I do have is the most access to Donald Trump than perhaps anybody has ever had outside of his organization, and he says that in the book. So I've got great access. I got an email from him yesterday. I think he's over in Scotland this week. And so just really excited about the opportunities to really turn over some stones that nobody's really turned over. So I've got a lot of information that I think people want to know.
Brad, hold on. Stay with us for a commercial break. I have tons of questions, and I know our listeners are fascinated by this and fascinated by REITs. So stay with us, everyone. We'll be back in about 2.5, 3 minutes. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Brad, thanks for sticking it out. Brad, when is your book coming out about Trump?
Well, that's a good question. I've been working on this project for 2 years, and a lot of people say, well, it's perfect timing, but I tell you, it's really the perfect timing for me is, I'm writing a business book. I'm not writing a political book on Donald Trump. That's not my wheelhouse. As I just said, I've spent over 2 decades in commercial real estate, so that's the value add for me is really to educate the world about Donald Trump and what he's really worth. But also, as you mentioned earlier on the show, Donald Trump is really a human brand. He really represents something that 99.9% of the population don't have. So it's the brand value component too. And it's interesting to watch. Every day, when he first announced, of course, he started dropping some sponsors in Macy's and various other things. So, I really wanted to find, how this is going. Politically, I can't tell you how far it's going to go. I really can. And again, I don't want to get into the political side of this because that's not, what I do. That's not my circle of competence. But so to answer your question, it's going to be the end of this year. I think he's going to be successful in the debate process and kind of see how this goes. I'm amazed that he has not flamed out. I think he's still ahead in a lot of polls. I cut on the TV every day, and he's obviously out there a lot. So I think it'll definitely be out this year. I've got multiple publishers now that want me to publish the book because it was harder for me before he announced, and so now I'm really putting my business hat back on and trying to negotiate the best deal for me, just like Donald Trump would for him. So, but I'm pretty close to getting it finished. I've got a lot of interns around the country at some major colleges who are helping me assimilate a lot of the research data for his properties and really come up with a true value of what Donald Trump is really worth.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of controversy, and I know you've chimed in on what's he really worth, and I know that's been a lot with him and Forbes and this and that. But let me ask you a question: is he have the same bravado in a personal one-on-one or a personal meeting with him, or when you email him, as he does on TV and The Apprentice, as I would know him, who's never met him?
It's interesting because one of the things I love about my job is I do get to interact with a lot of not only wealthy people, but people who are second-level thinkers in the world of real estate. So these are CEOs from Fortune 500 companies down to some smaller private REITs. So when I compare Donald Trump to a lot of the other high-level CEOs around the country, honestly, I really feel like this guy, he's brilliant. In the business world, he is brilliant. Now, he's tough. He's very tough, and obviously you can see that, on TV. But I can tell you because I've met with him, I don't know, over 100 times at least. I visited every property that he's developed or owns, except for one in Los Angeles. I've been to Scotland. I've seen them all. And so looking at the asset quality, looking at the businessman, he's extraordinary. That's part of his brand value. He's one of the most successful developers in the world. Now, from an individual perspective, and you were talking about the Zig Ziglar comment earlier, Trump is a very humble guy. I would say, and if I know him, so obviously from the television shows or more recently on the TV circuit, he may come across he is a harsh guy. To be worth multiples of billions, you've got to be tough. But I also see this humility in him, and I think that's an important part that people don't really see, but I see it. And he's always. I get phone calls from him, when I'm traveling, and he'll just say, "Hey, I'm just checking to see how was the property? How are you doing?" And so he is definitely thoughtful in that regard. Now, listen, again, I'm not. This book I'm writing is Brad Thomas's book. It's not Donald Trump's book. So, what I'm taking away, just like I do when I research a lot of these publicly traded companies, which I do every day, it's all business here. And so what I come up with in this book with Trump is Brad Thomas, what Brad Thomas thinks, not what Trump thinks. But overall, I think he's a really good guy. He has a little bit of an ego, but that's obviously we can argue how much of an ego, but yeah, he has an ego. But I'm not worth a couple billion either.
Hey, I think in order to be successful, and he's definitely whatever he's worth. If he's worth $10 billion or $1 billion, he's clearly successful. You have to have a big ego, and you have to be tough. And I think most people like that are. If you're soft, the world's going to eat you up. And I'll tell you, he has overcome economies that have buried other people. You talked about whatever problems you went through in the last recession. I went through I don't know your problems, but I went through a hell of a problem, and most people did. But Donald Trump, again, I have tremendous respect for him. I'm liking him more and more. Again, there's things that are I'm not 100% sure of, but I think he's touching a chord within the country that he's authentic. He's saying what he believes. He doesn't have handlers or this and that, and we don't believe in everything he says, but I'll give him a lot of credit, and I'm liking him more and more.
No, yeah. He's extremely polarizing, and frankly, that sells in our country and in the world. I mean, you could tell just by the rise of things like Fox News and Rush Limbaugh being polarizing, whether you actually believe what you're saying or espousing actually sells, and he recognizes how to sell himself better than anyone else in the entire world. So I think he does a good job. Now, the real question that everyone's going to be wondering, since you have this unparalleled access, is what's the deal with his hair?
Well, that's actually, I'm contemplating a chapter in the book just on that very subject, because I think I could get a chapter out of it.
It's worth it.
It is real. I was backstage at the one of the last Apprentice, I guess the last filming of the Celebrity Apprentice, and he was his makeup people were getting him ready for the filming, and I was just watching in the back of the room just to see and it is his real hair, it is, and obviously that's I think that's going to be interesting to include that in the book. I did want to say one other thing that I think's relevant though with Trump, and that is I know it's not only that I know Trump well, but I know his kids. And at least the three that work in the Trump organization, and I've got 5 kids of my own, and and they're younger, but as I'm trying to raise my family of 5, I think it's really important to look at your children, because you see a direct reflection of how the parents have done. And I will tell you, Trump has also done a very good job with parenting his children. And Ivanka, Don, and Eric, who work for the Trump organization, they're all very talented at what they do. So, in terms of the succession of the Trump brand and the Trump empire, I definitely think he's left that in good hands.
He seems like a real family man who's tried to ground his kids very well. I remember, I think it was Don Jr. told the story when he was in college. He never had any money, and he was just like everyone else. So, yeah. And by the way, if you follow Donald Jr. on Twitter, he's hysterical. Great sense of humor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Would you say, I want to segue to REITs, and maybe a good way to do it, is Trump a value investor, you think?
No, absolutely. In real estate, I was brought up in reading this Art of the Deal with, you've heard this, buy low, sell high. And really, when you start looking at value investing and really going back to Ben Graham, who is really the father of value investing and intelligent investor and security analysis. It's the same thing we call the margin of safety in value investing. So absolutely, Trump in the real estate world. I would never want to negotiate on the other side of the table from him. As long as I'm buying with him, I would not want to be buying something from him, because he is going to take as much flesh out of that transaction as possible. So he definitely is a fantastic negotiator, and so absolutely buy low, sell high. That's his mantra. The thing is, he doesn't really sell, and he'll tell you that. He's told me that a lot. He is a buy and hold investor. So you're not seeing him. I haven't seen him sell a whole lot, at least in the last decade or so.
I'll tell you, I love him. I just love him. And I love how he reinvented himself out of not the last recession, the recession before that. When he went through his troubles, he kind of changed his whole business model to selling his brand name and not taking on debt, or not taking on enough debt in proportion to his assets.
And I was down in Morelargo quite a bit in South Florida, and that's an interesting story. He bought that. He stole that, actually. and from the U.S. government, who was the previous owner. And, he owned it for quite a few years, but when he got into financial difficulties, what he did was very tactical. He went in and basically put together a club structure, divided, fractionalized or just divided up the interest, so not ordinary people, but very wealthy people could go in and use the facility. And so, I've been down there. I mean, he's got his own compound over there, so it's almost like he owns the club, but he has other income coming in using OPM, other people's money. And so it was a fantastic idea for him to do that. And, Morelargo is just another amazing property, irreplaceable property that he's got now.
Yep. Brad, we have to take a commercial break in a minute, and when we get back, I promise we'll talk REITs, because I'm really excited about that, because that really is what I want to talk about, and Todd and I are in the real estate business. But could you give out your contact information quickly and how people get in touch with you and subscribe to your newsletter?
Sure. Well, one thing, it's easy for me because I do write every day. So I write, either for Seeking Alpha or Forbes. So if you just type in Brad Thomas and Forbes, that'll take you to my website or Seeking Alpha. Again, I'm in the social media a lot through my writing, but also have a website, which is www.I, like iPad, REIT, investor.com. So that's the best place. Any of those places are fine. Or my Twitter, which is @Swan, which stands for Sleep Well at Night, _investor. That's @Swan_investor.
I love that, because when I saw @Swan, I didn't know what it was at first. And through, I guess, value investing, you sleep well at night.
Exactly.
Okay, Brad, I really appreciate it. Hang back in for 3 minutes. We'll be back in a few minutes with commercials. And I promise everyone we will talk REITs and how to sleep well at night.